Today we are going to take this and turn it into this. Hi, I'm Jennifer Eichelberger. I am the creator of the graphic novel The Heroic Deeds of Nicodemus Branch. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about converting a novel to a graphic novel. I started out my story as a novel and then switched it over to a graphic novel. So the main premise of my story is that what if there was a kid from a magical family who was embarrassed of his family and didn't like magic, so he disguised his magical abilities to make it seem like he had superpowers and became a superhero. So in my novel, I decided I needed two main characters. I needed someone from the magical point of view and someone from the hero, like superhero's point of view. So my two main characters are Nick and Zuzu. Nick is from a magical family, and Zuzu is a superhero who is a part of a superhero team. And they're best friends, but they are keeping these secrets from each other, so they don't know about each other's secret identities. Anyway, so when I was writing this as a novel, I was switching between the main characters at the chapters. So the first chapter, it was introduce Nick. There were things to set up that he had this innate desire to be kind of heroic. He wasn't. He kind of failed at it. And then my other main character, Zuzu, didn't even get introduced until chapter 2. And it worked great in a novel because, with novel, you have more time where you can set up and kind of unfold your characters, which I consider a strength for novels. You also get to see the inner thoughts of your characters. And graphic novels are much more like a movie than they are novels, in that they are faster paced. The settings, the character descriptions, all that is done in an instant. But you don't get to know that internal dialogue that characters will have in novels. So, like I said, I started out writing this as a novel because I felt as though there was too much to this story to put in a graphic novel form. And mostly is because it seemed like a lot of work, and I was like, I didn't want to do all that work. But one day it kind of hit me that this had to be a graphic novel and that I needed to put in the work and put in the effort to make a graphic novel. I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never done a graphic novel before. And so I had to do a lot of research before I even started. But one thing that I figured out in converting my novel to a graphic novel is that I had to change quite a few things. A lot of times when people love a book so much and then they go see the movie and they hate it, I could see something like that happening if people were able to read my novel first and then read the graphic novel. They might have the same sort of sense in that there really are quite a few changes that I took from the novel, putting it in a graphic novel. For instance, one of those things, in the beginning, I have my main character, Nick. He has to save a kid from being beat up by bullies. And that whole chapter takes place of Nick trying to help this kid, rescue him, and failing at it. But in my graphic novel, I felt that I couldn't wait to introduce Zuzu, the other main character, until later on in the story. And so I had them start out together, talking, them going to approach the bullies together to help that kid. But Zuzu gets called out right away. She has to go do some superhero business. And so Nick is left alone. So it's kind of the same because he's still facing the bullies on his own, but it's different in that Zuzu was there from the start. The other thing is, in my novel, I had a thing going on like off camera, which was Zuzu's team fighting this big battle downtown. This neighborhood got into a big, huge brawl for some unknown reason. So that was going on off camera in my novel, and that you wouldn't find out about it until like news articles or things like that. And you met Zuzu when Nick was walking home after he was, beat up by the bullies. And that's when you met up with Zuzu, and she had just barely been on this brawl thing. But in the graphic novel, the thing that I realized is that the graphic novel is so much more of a visual medium that I had to have that brawl take place on screen. And honestly, I think it's way more effective to have that take place on screen, especially in the graphic novel form, than in the novel form. Like, in the novel form, it was kind of fun because it was a slow mystery build about that Zuzu was at that big fight downtown. But here in the graphic novel, it just worked out better to have this fight going on screen. So one of the strengths of novels, like I said, is the inner dialogue that your characters can have. So you can't do that. And a lot of the character building happens in that inner dialogue, which makes it so that you love those characters so much. But you can't do that in a graphic novel because it's cheesy. You can't just have thought bubbles going off all the time. It doesn't work. There are a few ways to get around it, like a narrator voice. I've seen that done well in graphic novels. But that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to have a narrator voice going throughout my graphic novel to have that show that inner dialogue with my characters. So I had to figure out a different way to convey my characters. And I think this is where some people, when they love a book but hate the movie, is because you don't get to see the inner dialogue of the character. You don't get to feel that buildup that you do when you're reading the novel. In the graphic novel, for me to be able to do that, I had to make sure that my characters were distinct in voice. I mean, you need to do this in a novel as well, but distinct in voice and distinct in look, obviously, and just giving them those quirks that are specific to that character. So, for instance, Nick has a cousin who loves magic and will do it any chance he gets, which magic is illegal. And so Nick definitely tries avoiding his cousin whenever he can. So with this character who loves magic, in the graphic novel, he's got a very bossy tone, a very know-it-all tone, and just does spells whenever he gets a chance and not really caring if somebody sees him doing magic. Whereas Nick loves superheroes, whenever he gets a chance to see one or to talk about them, he takes that chance. And so those are the kind of personalities that I have to make sure that they show up throughout whenever that character is on screen, so to speak. If you have a novel and you want to transform your novel into a graphic novel, don't be afraid to rearrange scenes. Don't be afraid to exaggerate those character traits. And you're going to have to cut back, way back on dialogue. because you do not have the time to be able to do all the dialogue that you have in a regular novel. One more thing I was going to say. So when I was writing this as a novel, I had this novel, I have a novel series planned out to 5 books. And when I decided to turn it into a graphic novel, I had to split up the storyline differently than in the 5 regular novels. So the first novel is actually 3 graphic novels. And so it's split up different than just doing the 5 novels. And it's okay to do it. And I was able to do it because there is a great spot, like in about the first third of my book, in my novel, in the prose form, there is a great spot in there where there was an evil villain coming into their family bookstore. And so that made a great climax for the first graphic novel. That, I guess, is a little bit of a spoiler, but it's not too bad. Anyway, have you thought about converting your novel into a graphic novel? What are some of the challenges that you have come up against when you have tried to switch it over? One thing that you need to keep in mind is that it is not a one-for-one conversion. You can't just take page 1, make that page 1 of your graphic novel. It's not going to work out that way. It definitely has to be condensed. When you are taking that novel and sticking it in graphic novel form, there's a lot of editing going on, a lot of condensing. And what you want to do is maybe find the essence of your story and bringing that over into your graphic novel. Let me know if that made sense to you. I'm not so great at talking to the cameras yet, but what challenges do you come up against when you're trying to convert your novel over to a graphic novel? Or what are some of the tricks that you've learned? Let me know in the comments, and I'm going to do more videos like these talking about the process of taking a novel and switching it over to a graphic novel and the different aspects of that. So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Goodbye.